This is WAB's Week in Review, the show where we look back the last few days of stories from your WAB news team. I'm Alex Helmick, managing editor of WAB News. And today we start with the Atlanta-based Centers for Disease Control and Prevention soon could have a new permanent director. President Trump nominated Dr. Erica Schwartz for the role earlier this week. The CDC has been a flashpoint of issues under the Trump administration. Thousands of scientists, researchers, experts, and staff laid off. Major projects canceled or stalled. A mass shooting where a sheriff's deputy died allegedly at the hands of a gunman who believed conspiracy theories about vaccines. And then there are leadership issues. When Dr. Mandy Cohen's term as director ended, Trump nominated Congressman and Dr. Dan Weldon, a vaccine skeptic, whose name was pulled an hour before his hearing was set to begin because he didn't have the votes in the Republican-led Senate. Then Trump appointed Dr. Susan Menares, who was fired months later because she claimed she would not rubber stamp unscientific vaccine recommendations. Jim O'Neill was named interim. He does not have a medical background. He comes from Silicon Valley. All this falls on Robert Kennedy Jr., who has been one of the leading vaccine skeptics in the country for years. He also heads Health and Human Services, which oversees the CDC. Among other things, he has dismantled the CDC's Independent Vaccine Advisory Committee. Anyway, back to Schwartz. She is a doctor and a lawyer and has served in the Coast Guard. She later served as Deputy Surgeon General. She received glowing remarks from Trump and Kennedy on social media, but some in the anti-vaccine community have blasted her for her past promotion of vaccinations. Just a quick reminder, the CDC is charged with protecting Americans from preventable health threats. Switching gears now. With a deadline looming to change how Georgia's ballots get counted in November, state leaders are trying to find a solution. That's as Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones takes aim at rival gubernatorial candidate Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. WAB's Raul Bali had more.
Jones spent part of a letter to the state election board blaming Raffensperger for Georgia being in the position of having to vote one way in the May-June primaries and another way in November. By state law, QR codes can no longer be used to tabulate votes starting July 1st. But Raffensperger has defended himself by saying it's the legislature's job to take action. The state Senate, which Jones presides over, did not vote on House-passed legislation that would have pushed the deadline back. Jones is asking the state election board to determine if there's a way to legally conduct elections in November under current law. If not, allow voting by paper ballots. But during Wednesday's state election board meeting, Hall County election specialist Tom Brotz talked about how much making the switch would cost in time and money.
This ballot, created by the BMD, a little less than 15 cents each, and it'll scan in about 15 seconds. The content on a hand-marked pre-printed paper ballot is 2 18-inch pages, which are 35 cents each, for 70 cents a ballot, 55-cent differential. And so this scans in about 42 seconds.
It would run Hall County an additional $300,000, not including staffing. He noted another challenge.
There's 160 different documents in terms of what would be in the active polling places. So that's a huge library that would be complicated. And if you contemplate the poll workers going and finding exactly the right ballot and then getting it to exactly the correct voter,
lawmakers could return for a special session to solve the QR code issue. Raul Bali, WABE News.
Well, the UK man charged in 3 metro area attacks that left 2 dead served in the U.S. Navy and had prior criminal convictions. Court records show Ololukintan Adon Abel pleaded guilty in 2024 to assaulting 2 police officers with a deadly weapon and attacking another person while stationed in California. WAB's Emily Wu Pearson had more.
Adon Abel has been charged with 2 counts of malice murder, aggravated assault, and firearms counts after 2 women were killed and a man injured Monday morning in Decatur, Brookhaven, and Panthersville. One woman was an employee of the Department of Homeland Security, drawing scrutiny from DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin, who stated on social media the UK native received citizenship in 2022 under the Biden administration. A man with a similar name and the same birth date pleaded guilty last June in Chatham County, Georgia, to 4 misdemeanor counts of sexual battery, but it's not clear if they're the same individual. Emily Wu Pearson, WABE News.
Well, some community members and advocates say they're frustrated after no bills related to the data center industry passed during Georgia's legislative session. As WAB's Dormaya Vance reported, more than a dozen bills were introduced, but none made it to the governor's desk.
This year's session saw proposals like House Bill 1063 and Senate Bill 34, which aim to protect consumers from electricity costs related to data centers. But those measures didn't advance.
And I'm definitely frustrated by that.
Wanda Mosley is the policy director with Black Voters Matter. She lives in South Fulton, and she's also a community organizer educating folks on what she sees as the impacts of data centers.
There aren't any tangible benefits for everyday Georgians. But I was optimistic coming into the legislative session because each of those legislators, they know and they heard the loud, resounding message that voters in Georgia sent. We are tired of data centers.
Mosley says she was surprised by the lack of action in the Georgia General Assembly, especially after 2 Democrats unseated Republican incumbents in last year's Public Service Commission races. Fayette County resident and organizer Diana Dietz says she's disappointed too, but she still has some hope for state-level data center regulation in the future.
We have next year, right? So maybe every year as we get new forward-thinking legislators in place who are familiar with this industry and don't want to allow it to ruin communities, eventually we'll get some guardrails. Hopefully it won't be too late.
Nonprofit Science for Georgia reports nearly 100 data centers in metro Atlanta and at least 40 are planned for the South Side. And recently, Coweta County commissioners greenlit rezoning for a massive data center development, the 800-acre, $17 billion project Cell near Noonan. Dormaya Vance, WABE News.
Sonny Perdue says he's retiring from his position as Chancellor of the University System of Georgia. WABE's Melissa Fado had more on the 79-year-old former Georgia governor.
In a statement, Perdue says serving as chancellor for Georgia's 25 public universities and colleges has been one of the most impactful roles in his life. According to the University System of Georgia, over the last 4 years, he helped boost enrollment, installed new university presidents, and drove an all-time high of degrees awarded to students. Perdue previously served as a Georgia state senator and 2 terms as governor. When he took office in 2003, he became the first Republican governor of Georgia in over 130 years. He also served as U.S. Secretary of Agriculture during the first Trump administration. Perdue will stay in his role until the USG finds a replacement. Melissa Fato, WABE News.
Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport remains the world's busiest for passenger traffic. That's according to Airports Council International World. WAB's Marlon Hyde told us about it.
The report shows that Atlanta's airport saw over 106 million passengers in 2025, a slight drop from the previous year. Chicago O'Hare International Airport, which consistently challenges for the world's busiest airport title, ranks first for aircraft movements. Kyle Townsend is a hospitality professor at Georgia State University.
The gap between Hartsfield and its competitors is a fairly significant number of people. It doesn't look like we are likely to lose that ground anytime soon, assuming there aren't any significant economic headwinds.
Dubai International Airport again ranked second with over 95 million passengers, followed by Tokyo. Marla Hyde, WABE News.
Well, Fulton County's sheriff says he's using a first-of-his-kind drone system to keep other drones from carrying contraband into the jail he runs. It's one way law enforcement agencies across the country are trying to plug safety gaps. But critics warn that the new jail drone could lead to mass surveillance. WAB's Shemaine Cruz reported the story.
A drone that can record audio and video is docked on the roof of Atlanta's Fulton County Jail, ready to take off anywhere within a 4-mile radius.
This has been certainly the bane of some of our existence.
That's Fulton County Sheriff Patrick Labatt at a recent event showcasing the technology. He says almost 300 drone flights were spotted over his jail's airspace in the first half of 2025, and that most of those were delivering what he calls contraband.
We've had everything from chicken sandwiches to cigarettes to really just tools to take the jail apart.
Labatt says he's seen drones fly across the perimeter to deliver items directly to people in jail through holes in windows. In some prisons, drones deliver drugs, weapons, and cell phones.
Now, if it were up to me, I'd take a shotgun and I'd shoot them all down, right? I'd climb up top of the roof, but certainly we can't do that right now.
That's because federal law limits state and local officials' ability to detect and stop drone threats. Nearly 24 state attorneys general, including Georgia's, recently sent a letter to the Trump administration aiming to change that. But for now, private companies are stepping up to offer support.
Working a facility like this is not easy.
That's Garrett Langley, CEO of Atlanta-based Flock Safety, which is supplying the jail drone. He says he hopes it'll be the first of many.
For the sheriff, drones can become a force multiplier, increasing safety for both the deputies and the individuals who are here in custody.
Some other law enforcement agencies are already using drones to help with emergency calls, but Langley says he wants his to help catch the suspects behind contraband drops. The drone at the jail can arrive at a security breach within 85 seconds, way faster than it would take deputies. And Flock says 6 deputies have been trained as drone operators. Problem is, critics don't share their excitement. Christopher Bruce is with the ACLU of Georgia.
It's not just going to be at a jail.
In fact, the sheriff says he ultimately wants to expand to position 19 drones around the county to do things like check that registered sex offenders are where they should be. But Bruce says a drone with eyes in the sky should concern everyone in the surrounding area.
When you put up a camera, that camera is not just going to pick up a specific target. Anybody that walks by a camera could be held and their data could be held for whatever reason.
Flock has come under fire over its automatic license plate readers. The technology is popular with police for helping solve crimes, but some cities have ditched it over fears that local data could be used to aid federal immigration efforts. The sheriff didn't address those concerns, but he says his new jail drone is, quote, not a Big Brother situation. Shemaine Cruz, WABE News.
You're listening to WAB's Week in Review with me, Alex Helmick. Atlanta Public Schools is planning to turn 7 facilities, including 6 elementary schools, into community hubs serving students and their families. WAB's Mei Shu explained.
APS is consolidating and closing the following schools at the end of the next school year in the face of declining enrollment: Cleveland Avenue, Continental Colony, Dunbar, F.L. Stanton, Perkerson, and Peyton Forest. The current APS Student and Family Support Hub near downtown Atlanta used to be the old Oglethorpe Elementary School. The hub provides space for community gatherings and events and has a store with free clothes, cleaning products, food, and school supplies for APS families. Here's APS Operations Senior Advisor Chelsea Montgomery.
So this was actually the old cafeteria. So this was the serving line. It doesn't look like a cafeteria anymore, but this is now our store. So we do take donations. We have an Amazon wish list, but this is where families can come, any family affiliated with APS.
Montgomery says these hubs can provide wraparound services for families that need help filling basic needs.
So if a student doesn't have clean clothes, sometimes they'll be absent. If they are hungry for a long weekend, that can really impact how they're feeling Monday morning at school, and it can impact their behavior and other things like that, their mental health, their well-being.
According to APS Superintendent Brian Johnson, the district will save around $20 million through this plan. Mei Shu, WABE News.
And a note of disclosure, the Atlanta Board of Education holds WABE's broadcast license. Finally, today, researchers at the University of Georgia are looking at how birds move around home turf to figure out how they're spreading the avian influenza. WAB's Marissa Mecki told us about it.
Identifying avian influenza has been a huge priority for wild bird conservation and Georgia's booming poultry industry since the virus began spreading quickly in 2022. While the virus does occur naturally in wild birds, when it evolves to become highly pathogenic, it can cause major die-offs. Claire Teitelbaum works with the U.S. Geological Survey and the University of Georgia on wildlife research.
We have a fair number of predictive models that try to predict where we're going to see avian flu pop up. So looking at either risk to wild birds or particularly risk of spillover to poultry.
Teitelbaum says these models work, but they're not all that precise.
They don't take into account where those birds are coming from or where they're going.
And while some do look at migration, they're still only estimating when the virus will arrive.
But it doesn't answer questions about what it's going to do once it gets there.
Teitelbaum says her study looked at more localized data to see what's driving wild birds moving about their area, linking that to detections of the avian flu. To her surprise, Teitelbaum says it was consistent across 26 species of waterfowl that the distances they moved were closely linked not to weather or vegetation, but to how diverse the landscape was.
How many different types of habitats are in a relatively small area.
Which, she says, means the birds can access different habitats to eat or sleep without traveling far. And for avian influenza,
we found this weak relationship, but a relationship where birds were predicted to be moving farther, flu appeared to be spreading further.
Teitelbaum says this study can add more precision to our modeling of the virus, and she's hoping to dig into some of the variables, like weather, more in the future. Marissa Mecki, WABE News.
That's all for the show this week. My thanks to the WABE News team for all the great work. You can find more at WABE.org. I'm Alex Helmick. Thank you for supporting WABE News and listening to The Week in Review.